Hey, do you know? Here. First thing I want to read to you.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Heck says, I've been enjoying listening to the podcast for a while. This is a nice change to be able to see you two as well, because we're now on YouTube. We're
We
also in your
are.
ear. Hi, Dave. It's
Hi.
fantastic to see you. How are you doing?
That's great to see you too, Daniel. Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. And yeah, it's good to get listener, well, it's not even listener feedback now, it's viewer feedback on YouTube. I'm
Chat. What do we think about that?
yes. It's it's kind of crazy, but it's also a lot of fun. I did not expect switching to video and audio to kind of be as immediately a fun thing.
It is a
I
fun
think it
thing, yeah.
helps that it helps that we've had video forever talking to each other. I think as well. The service we use to record all of this, we've had our respective video feeds to see each other with for a little while now, and I like that because it means I get the visual of what you're up to as well, and we can give each other feedback. But it's nice to share that with listeners as well.
It is. We are insanely grateful for all of the comments you post on YouTube and all of the emails that you send us and all of the Mastodon comments that you send us, which are not super many, but that's especially where we're so happy. And we're gonna continue
Yeah.
reading them out on the show as long as I feel like doing that, basically. And on that note, hey, welcome to Waiting for Review, a show about the majestic indie developer lifestyle. Join our scintillating hosts, Dave and Daniel, and let's hear about a tiny slice of their thrilling lives. Join us while waiting for review. Dave, I've been
Hey.
waiting not for review, but for my database server for the last, I want to say 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Because every now and then it would just crash and not produce proper data, and we called this the Thorny Data problem. I think the first episode where I told you about this was actually called Thorny Data because you coined that term, and I
Mm-hmm.
love it. And I've now finally have it. I had it. I reached a point where I could reproduce the problem. I've boiled it
Mm-hmm.
down finally to a single line of JSON that is about, I don't know, 40 characters long. It's just two properties. One is a timestamp that just needs to be there for the database to accept the data at all. And the other one is a key and a value. The key is called A, comma, B. The value doesn't matter. Like the comma in the key is what crashes everything.
Right. Okay.
And so that
Is
is
that
finally
is
the
that legit JSON?
well, at least
Is that key legit JSON?
none of the JSON parsing code that I've used to parse the JSON so far has ever rejected it. And I think so that code only has been touched by the Python JSON parser, which I use in the ingest API. Maybe the
Mm-hmm.
Swift JSON parser would have rejected it. I don't know. Like someone else on Mastodon, when I told this story, actually asked the same question. Is that legal JSON? I don't know. Either way, commas are now replaced by underscores in keys. In fact, I have a list of allowed characters, and everything else will be replaced by an underscore in the key. Because I don't want to take 6 months and then find the next character that's thorny. And
No.
with that, I finally managed to file a report or a bug issue actually with Apache Druid with the time series database that I use, and
Yep.
it feels so good to finally have that down so far. In that actually I can really see the problem, and I because at the beginning I would just have to sit around and wait until the problem maybe showed up or not. Then after some time I could see individual days were affected by the problem. So if I would ask the system to re-ingest or reload one of those days, then that would crash. But that still takes I don't know, 15, 20, 25 minutes to load. And now finally I can immediately make the thing crash. And that allows me to actually write a bug report.
Yep.
It's Apache/Droid issue 15736. I'm going to link it to the show notes just because I'm so
Yeah, please do.
incredibly proud of it. Yeah.
Well, I'm
And
very glad to hear that, Daniel. Like, this has been I mean, it's given us something to talk back to on the show and to kind of keep digging into each time. But I've been kind of gathering your frustration with this as well, and the difficulty of the debugging itself is a round trip of like 15, 20 minutes of time, right? As you sort of try and figure this out.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I've learned a lot on the way, but I'm really glad I'm this far. Only downside now is this. So I'm hoping that this will actually increase the stability a lot, and so I can go back to actually working on features and or performance. Only downside is this. There was a time last weekend when I thought I had found the issue, but my fix was too broad. Like I just told you that I have a list of allowed characters, and I'm just going to make sure that the keys only contain a character. I applied that thing to both keys and values at first because I thought it was in the values, and only afterwards I dug deeper because I wanted to prevent the problem from spreading. Because two stories I need to tell. Okay, so I wanted to stop the problem from spreading because at first all the Thorny data that TelemetryDeck has came from two very tiny apps. I think I told you this last time already. So I was I was able to say like, okay, just special case those two app IDs, and that's fine. But now suddenly new Thorny data came in, and it crashed immediately, like on ingestion. So the error was actually different in that when the Thorny data is in the historical data, then retrieving data doesn't work, which is bad. But if the error is in the data that comes in the message queue, then just like new signals won't arrive. They will just like pile up in the message queue. Also not very fun. No. So people would just like be like, the last data I'm seeing is like 5 hours old. What's going on?
Right.
So, and that was an actual live app with like from a larger customer that has more than a few users. So I was like, okay, I can't just like not deal with this. So I had a look at the data, and there were commas in the keys and the values. And so I was like, okay, I'm just right now assuming, because the error message that I get, the crash, you have to dig a bit. You have to dig first into the one log file that tells you which server the problem is, and then you look at that server's log file that tells you which file the log is in, and then you can open that file, and that is the log, and there you have an exception. The exception kind of quotes part of a signal. So if I search for that string, I get like one specific signal, and that always contained a comma. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to replace both keys and values, like all the characters that are not in this list of allowed characters. I'm going to replace them with an underscore, and that is then that's fine, right? And the allowed characters is like A to Z or A to Z in both upper and lowercase, all the numbers, and underscores, maybe one or two more. Turns out that was very overzealous. Example, like we offer, for example, the ability to like tell you which operating system you're running on, and the operating system is iOS underscore 14 or iOS underscore not underscore iOS space 17 or iOS space 16. And so that is actually that gets filtered out. Like, now that's like in the database. The database contains things like iOS space underscore 16, which is a completely different string than iOS space 16. So you suddenly have more operating systems, which is kind of weird. And then also, which iPhone do you have? You have an iPhone 13,2. And that suddenly says iPhone 13 underscore 2. And that's what like made me like say like, stop, wait. This has been a mistake. This was definitely a mistake.
Yeah.
Because I went too far and I rewrote that data. And so what do I do now? The answer is I first of all, I do the thing that I now always do when something is wrong on the server or something is wrong in a very important part of the system that is not just code, which is I open Notion and begin a new document and just write down my thoughts, my assumptions, and all the error messages that I have. Like, this is a fantastic tool, and I told you about this last time as well. But like, I'm continuing doing this, and it's like just so incredibly helpful. And so I was like, okay, first of all, I'm gonna revert that change where I replace the character so aggressively. Obviously, it's producing broken data, so I don't want that to happen anymore. And so I was like, okay, if that one app is sending more signals, then so be it. Then I will have to fix them using the old methods that I have now learned and that are in another Notion document. But with that, and then I'd really tried, and I was like, okay, and now I really need to dig down as much as possible and really, really just find where this problem is. And so I finally, I went to the documentation, found out various other forms of loading data into the system. And one of them is actually where you can just paste a single signal into a text box, and then it will just like start the whole process and try to like parse and ingest that single signal. And so I could actually prove to myself that, oh yeah, that is the signal that is actually breaking the thing. And so from then on, it became just a process of paring down that signal further and further down until I had it down to one key value pair, or two if you account for the timestamp. And then I could play around with those strings and prove to myself, yes, it doesn't matter what the value is. If the key has a comma, that is what's producing the thing. And so then I could really create the right amount of data changing, data fixing for the ingest server, which is have a list of allowed characters for the keys, but not for the values. Well, the values also have allowed characters, but that's like way wider. So yeah, now I have 2.5 days of data that is not perfectly right. And that bugs me. So I loaded the data. I wanted to download the data, but it turns out it takes a day to just download it to my computer. So instead, I created a VM in the cloud and added a 3 terabyte hard or virtual hard drive to it. And so what I've done today is I wrote sed scripts, sed SED, which is it's the Unix stream editor. That's what SED stands for, I think. And
okay.
Yeah, that will just basically regexes that will find the broken data, or at least as much as I can, like describe with regex, find the broken data where I'm like all those instances where I'm really sure that what is actually broken and in what way, and then try to set it right. And so as we are like, I have tried this out with smaller sets of the data, and as we are speaking, actually, it is running on the thing in a screen session, because if my SSH disconnects, otherwise it will be broken. And we are, let me check, we are at about 75%. So it might actually finish by the time we're actually finishing. And so then I will have on that hard drive, I will have fixed data. And then like I will have to re-ingest it, of course, but that's also I'm a absolute professional at that. So my life, which has had so much frustration because of this bug for the last half year, and for the last month, for the whole month of January, like this problem has been actively frustrating me and like robbing me of nights and weekends. Our long national nightmare, Dave, is finally over.
Yep. You are finally getting these thorns out of your side, as it were.
Just everything is just a tiny bit nice.
Excellent. And that's, what a way to go into the rest of the year, right? When you've managed to slay one of these long-standing things. I'm trying to turn it into a positive for you, Daniel. I know how frustrating it's been over this time.
I am so happy. Like, of course, I would have loved to find this earlier. especially like I am a reasonably experienced software engineer, right? I should be able to debug stuff. And
Hmm.
now that I know the solution, I'm like, I'm going back into my notes and finding that, oh yeah, at the very beginning, I had an inkling that, oh yeah, maybe I will look into this part of the log or whatever. And had I
Yeah.
done that and then followed up directly, then I would have like found this way earlier. But yeah, sometimes it just takes a while.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to go around the long way to then really, really feel like you've landed it and to understand the issue. Again, like, okay, I'm trying to turn this into a positive. It is a positive, but sort of thinking about everybody listening in, like we've all had these moments, like in the course of a dev career of any length, you do end up with these sort of like I want to say almost kind of Moby Dick kind of esque bug hunts, right? Um, I've run into a few with the with GoVJ with my video mixer because AV Foundation has got a lot of different bits to it. It is absolutely possible to cause things to stutter if you block the main thread with video. It's very, very easy to end up in that sort of an issue. And certainly in my first round of dev back in 2014, uh, obviously devices were not as powerful as they are now. It was very, very easy to do stuff that would then end up with a random like frame drop, or in my case, the one that was similar to your situation, I think, in terms of the time it took and the type of issue, was that I had an issue with when you start playing a video, it would have a lot of lag before it
Ugh,
played.
it's
Yeah.
frustrating.
So if you think about what's going on with like an app like mine, you want to press the button and the video plays, right? You don't want any latency at all. Um, in fact, I never really solved it back in 2015. It's kind of amusing if I think about it. I quote unquote solved it by having a drag and drop paradigm on my
Okay.
user interface, right?
Ah,
So
yeah.
you
Well,
drag.
sometimes that's the solution, right?
Yeah. It was. I mean, it kind of was the solution, and so if you think you sort of pressed on the video to select it and then would drag it up into one of the slots to
Mm-hmm.
play it on either channel, that was just enough kind of latency in the user interaction that people didn't notice the latency in the video actually
Fantastic.
starting.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of? When I was a young boy, I used to play a game called Wing Commander. I think Wing Commander 4, maybe, or 3, something like that. And
Hmm.
famously, Wing Commander was the game that whenever you selected quit game, they discovered during development that that would cause a crash. And so the user would go back to the command line. That was back in the days of the DOS command line. The user would go back to the command line and would see an error message that says something like, hey, wingcommander.exe just crashed at a memory address such and
Hmm.
such. And so what they did was
Yeah.
they weren't able to find the issue. So what they did was they changed this error message to thank you for playing Wing Commander. And so that would display every time you quit the game.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's
And so of
brilliant.
course,
It's
if you encounter an exception in the logs or whatever, it would also say thank you for playing Wing Commander. But I mean, like it worked.
yeah. That's the sort of thing that you could probably use a macro or something so that the you have a dev version that doesn't give you that error message, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly, I if I think about it though, that fix that I found at the time, it was like a
Mhm.
Bob Ross moment, right? Oh, my UI is like this, and now everything's magically working, and I'm like, ah, cool, happy accidents, keep
Mhm.
moving. Um, and I guess to some degree, I thought I'd solved the issue in amongst my other fixes and attempts at optimizing the engine underneath. only to be faced with the fact that when I then went, and it's been through several successive rewrites, right? I've had the Objective-C version made back then. Then there was the Swift port of it a couple of years later, which was almost literally just a direct translation of the Objective-C code. And then 2 years ago, I was pulling together the current version of GoVJ. And within that, at the time, I was programming in the router design pattern. So the UI and everything is all in the design pattern that I laid out for that. But really, at that point in time, 2 years back, the big deal was that I found some of the issues that were causing this latency.
Ooh, what were the issues?
Effectively, I can't really get into the depth of it even now because I found it, I fixed it, everything sort of clicked into place. So I was like,
Is it
yeah,
because
cool,
you're
this is
under
working.
NDA, Dave? Is it because you cannot tell? It is a secret.
Oh no. I'm sorry, that creep. ASMR style Daniel whispering. Crikey. I'd love to be able to claim I was under NDA for my own app, Daniel, but unfortunately not. No, there's nothing secret about how I fixed it either. It's no secret sauce or anything, but yeah, it's been a while and I can't remember is the honest answer to that. And that happens too, right? You end up fixing these things, you're 3 levels down, and it's only when you're actually back there that you can really explain what you've done. But anyway, I fixed it. That was a couple of years back. SwiftUI router version went live in July, I think it was, 2022.
Mm-hmm. I remember we talked a lot
into
about that at the time.
Yeah. It was a change into a subscription model for the app as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's been live ever since then. And I've added to it, I've updated it. But I'm the reason I'm talking about this, Daniel, is this links right into what I'm doing right now. I'm once again rebuilding my app.
Yeah, I was trying to segue into that.
So, but it's true. This is what I'm doing. Yep.
Yeah. How's that faring? Like, how's it going? What are your goals?
Well, yeah. Okay. So for context, 2 years ago, I used the router design pattern, which is what I was using in my day job at the time with the team that I was managing. And it was a very effective pattern for that world, right? It's where the main principles of it, if you like, is that every screen is labeled as such. So, SwiftUI, everything's a view. Well, I would specifically call the view that represents the whole screen a screen. It would have a protocol that it would use to talk back to its router. And the router was effectively a glorified view model with an observable object backing it up. And so routers would be like that. They would have this view model component that sort of managed the whole state, if you like, of a flow.
Mm-hmm.
And the router would also be responsible for creating screens and giving those views back to the view layer. All very nicely separated. Bit of a minimum viable
in between question. Sorry. Was that before SwiftUI, or does that work with SwiftUI too?
Only with SwiftUI.
All right.
So the design pattern here was very much a case of me trying to assert some level of design pattern control over SwiftUI. And I've got a blog post about it, actually. I'll put it in our show notes. We'll link it all up. But I had a blog post that guided people through what I did, an example repo. I even had Xcode templates for the router and for the screen and view model pairs. Brilliant. However, really, really cool when you've got a team of, say, 4 or 5 people trying not to tread on each other's toes. Yep. Really, really cool when you want sort of minimum viable dependency injection outside of Swift's environment layer, and so on. and so on. Not so cool when you are a solo indie dev trying to just get stuff done. So it's one of those things where it was easy for me at the time to lean into the design pattern because I was using it day in, day out, and using it in a side project was helpful. And we sort of touched on this in the last episode as well, as that, like, you know, I sort of end up with a historical sedimentary layer of design patterns in my side projects, right, that are representing what was useful for me in my day jobs at the time. So this current refactoring is kind of a factory reset.
Whew.
And yeah, to explain that better, about I want to say 6 months ago, again, we spoke about this at the time, but I, as we were heading up for a house move, I stopped working on my apps for new features, and I started making the Lego block Swift packages that I've been using for things since. Yep, and they are Swift packages that have got things like, you know, a settings menu that can, a setting screen that can be configured. I've got a paywall package where I can drop my standard kind of paywall in and wire it all up to Revenue Cat, and so on and so on. And one of the things I did when making these packages is that I went, okay, I'm not going to use any specific design pattern here. I'm going to use effectively Apple default, everything's in SwiftUI's view layer kind of approach. So no fancy dependency injection or anything like that. I'm using the environment. Brilliant. And I found that there was a lovely sort of fluidity that started to build up. And I was like, oh, right, okay, I get it. I get why Apple sort of do it this way. Whereas maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I just didn't. And that has had a knock-on effect, so that now I'm sort of coming back to add stuff to GoVJ, and I'm like, oh my God, it's got this design pattern that's actually slowing me down. So I'm ripping it out. I'm raising it to the ground. Yeah.
How bad is
which
that? Like,
may not.
how much work is freeing one view of the router pattern?
It has a cascade effect, right? Because as soon as you get rid of one bit or you try and change one bit, you've then got to solve the flow-on problem of, well, now this doesn't connect to anything. So I'd end up quite literally with screens where they've got, say, a back button or a dismiss button, and it doesn't work because there's no router to listen to that response to then go and change the presenting value. And so you sort of solve one bit in a screen, and then you've got to come back up to the router level and remove that bit, and then that cascades to the other screens that the router held on to. And so what's happening really is that I'm ending up in these kind of very deep weed whacking kind of sessions with a router and its associated child views. Like I'm having to go sort of block by block, flow by flow.
Deep in the jungle with your machete and just like trying not to get lost.
And
okay,
it's
the code,
yeah,
the view code, like the layout code, that you can reuse that, right? So it's not a complete rewrite of a view or something.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of different concepts that I've got to sort of weigh here as well. So I had a dependency injection method where I'm using property wrappers. And so I've got a property wrapper called injected. So I just write at injected, and then off there I can then call down using key value paths in brackets after that, the thing that I want to bring down into the view model typically. And I've not changed that, right? There's no reason to change that. The only thing that I have changed there is that in some cases, my router would be creating the view models and giving them to the views. And so I'm shutting that door. There is no more of that responsibility. And that means a view has to create their own view model on instantiation, as it were. And there's some edges with that, right? Just in terms of if there was ever anything that the view model was configured with from the router, then I've got to push it down a level. So I'm solving all these problems, and it's kind of like everything everywhere all at once, right? I've got, you fix that one bit, this bit doesn't fit, so you've got to fix that bit, then that bit, and then eventually it compiles, and you run it, and you test it, and you go, yeah, okay, these things are no longer wired up properly. I've got to make sure that now I don't know, this button presents the sheet at the right level, or dismisses things appropriately or whatever. So it's kind of like I'm ripping out what feels like somewhere between a third to maybe 40-50% of the code and rewriting
Whew.
in the UI layer. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So there is a
And is
point
that
when you end up
fun,
doing jobs
or
like
is
this.
that a chore?
It's largely a chore. It's fun when it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like fresh snow when it's all done, and you look back and you're like, ah, cool, yeah,
It's
that
like when you're
works.
cleaning the kitchen or the whole apartment, it's just like done, and you're like, oh, this is so nice.
Yes, but in the meantime, to follow that analogy, it's like you start with a view, and you make a clean spot, and then that entire side of the kitchen then needs to be done because you've made one clean spot. And it's happening in bits by bit. Like each router is a different work surface. So eventually I'll have a clean room, and users won't be able to tell any difference if I've done my job properly.
Yeah.
And so the question then comes, well, why bother? Right? The app works. Why not just leave it as it is? The honest answer to that is that I wanted to make this change. But the logical underpinning, if you like, is that as I wire in these Lego blocks, it makes more sense if the rest of the app is sort of working in this much more like Apple default Swift UI way of working, if you like. Equally, I suspect, my suspicion here is that by sort of choosing that as my lowest common denominator, it kind of doesn't really matter what design patterns I'm using in my day job, as it were, right?
Yeah.
They're there, this is here. And I think that's going to be useful in the course of time.
Yeah, I feel that, especially because you say like, oh yeah, it's just like you don't need to do it, but what this enables you to do is it enables you to keep your motivation and your velocity high. And those are really important, especially because this is your side project. So because it's
Yes.
your side project, you want to make everything as easy as possible for you. And you need to make it like, especially you haven't worked on it for a week or two and you come back, and now if you have to really get into a complicated pattern again, like that may be hard. Whereas like if it's just like, oh yeah, this is everything is easy to do and you can touch everywhere and just like immediately get a cool result, that is definitely worth something. And on top of that,
Absolutely, yeah.
it is your side project, so you're allowed to do things that are just fun or just you want to do them. That's the other thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the thing here is it's a bit of preparation as well, in terms of I'm going to be working on GoVJ Pro in another month or two. That's my plan. And before I get into the sort of GoVJ Pro mode, if you like, I want to
So
have
wait, so
everything
the
kind
decision
of
has been made to
standardized
go
here.
forward with GoVJ Pro?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it has been made. Fantastic news.
I've had a reasonable amount of feedback from the landing page, like enough to show me that there is some interest there. And there was an element of this was always going to happen in one way or another, right? The only thing up for debate was whether I would do it over a longer period of time or a shorter period of time, right? And what I've realized is there's enough interest out there for it to be worth me giving it a shot. And I have enough personal interest and motivation to really give it a good go. Like the design that I made for the landing page, I'm kind of in love with it. I keep thinking about it. It keeps pulling me back. And I'm like, oh, I've got to build the thing. I've got to build the thing. So weed whacking the original GoVJ codebase is, it feels like I'm sort of limbering up for that as well. So
Yeah, I get that.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to have a shared code base, but the video library that is one of my Lego blocks that I've been working on for the last 6 months, that doesn't exist in regular GoVJ today. I've got the old version of the library there at the moment. So by doing this sort of refactor, I will then, the final stroke of that is to then patch in the new video engine. And what that will do for me is that will let me kind of road test wiring up this video engine to a set of controls in an existing app with existing behaviors. And I know for a fact I'm going to have to refactor some of the video engine. So, but at the moment, I don't quite know exactly how that's all going to come together. So if I do it with the existing app, it's a known quantity. I've got known expected UX and behavior, and that will let me tune the engine's hooks, if you like, for the UI.
But it doesn't give you the fun
app.
of just rewriting everything.
Pardon?
But it doesn't give you the fun of just like starting from scratch.
No, which will be the new that'll be the new project, and that's okay.
Did I derail your train of thought there?
But what I'm saying,
sorry,
you totally did. We also had a little bit of lag in the call, which shouldn't be noticeable when this all comes together for YouTube, but because the way the service works, I get a lower quality video call while we speak, and then the higher quality gets uploaded behind the scenes. Anyway, sorry, Daniel. Yeah, it skipped out as you were talking, but I think what you were saying was that doesn't give me the fun of a whole refactor, a whole rewrite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's okay. I mean, like, what I'm saying here, though, is I've got my video engine is sort of ready to go. At the moment, though, it's not battle tested. It hasn't really been used in anything other than test apps. So by bringing that back into the existing app, I will be able to kick its tires without also worrying about the UX of a new app. And then that should hopefully mean that I can go straight into the pro development and everything's sort of good to start using straight out of the box. So yeah, we shall see.
I think that's also the right approach. So I said earlier, yeah, that doesn't give you the warm, fun feeling of rewriting everything. But I think one thing that we have said on this show again and again is that rewriting everything is usually more work than it seems at the time, and it's mostly not a good idea. Like if you really want to rewrite everything, like go ahead, of course, but like it's probably not the right idea. And I think like it's also not the right idea in your case. So, like especially if you have all that UI already to work with this stuff. So yeah, that's exactly the right approach, I think.
It'll let me test out a few things, right? I've not just got the UI to consider with this sort of an app. I've also got the MIDI layer that I added last year, and how that interacts with the video mixing engine that you're controlling. I want to extend that and add gamepad and joystick inputs as well, so you can use like a PlayStation controller with the app. That's a whole other thing I'll get into later in the year, I guess. But yeah, I guess all this to say, at the moment, it feels like I'm editing a lot of code, that I'm rewriting a whole bunch of stuff. It's kind of not very fulfilling, but the end goal is. And hopefully I'll be a bit more enthusiastic about where things are sort of when we catch up in a week or two. But these things are things that devs do every now and again. These are things that I think we all sort of think about in one way or another, even if it's just a case of like, well, I've made version 1 of the thing, and actually version 2 needs to take so many things into consideration, I may as well start again, for example, right? You sort of end up in that kind of stage.
I like to think
often
that this is basically what the phrase technical debt actually means. Like some points in the development, you know you're not doing everything perfectly right, because that's just not where your app is at, or that's not where your company or you as a person are at. Like, so you just like you do it like the best way that is appropriate for the situation, but that means you incur technical debt, and then at the later time you pay
Yep.
it back with one of those weed
Yep.
whacking sessions. And that's just the way it is. And it's just, you just got to accept that this is also part of sometimes you need to clean your house.
Yes. Yes. And I think I described this once in a corporate kind of setting where I needed buy-in, right? I needed buy-in from product owners and various other people to actually go and pay down some technical debt
Mm-hmm.
before we could start adding new features, because I knew that if we added a whole load of new stuff to what existed, it was just going to be like a very unstable stack of cards after a point in
Yeah.
time. And the way I sold it to those people at the time was I turned it on its head and I described it as technical credit. Right.
Okay.
So
Tell me more.
I said that rather than it being technical debt we have to pay because we owe it, what we're actually doing is we're getting ourselves into credit to be able to add new features. It was
Okay.
a very kind of political sleight of hand, if you like, but they really love this idea of it's not technical debt, it's technical credit. Pay it
Oh
now and
yeah,
we can
debt
do
is
nice things.
bad, but credit is good. Yeah, I can see that. Maybe we should all, as
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
community, embrace that. Like, if
I,
you
I,
if your
I
development
still
is
like the
slow,
idea, right?
it's not because you're in debt. It's just like because you haven't built up the credit.
Yes, yes, exactly. And so there was this idea of like getting yourself into credit first before then being able to go and do a lot of new things. It's the same concept, right? You know, it's either paying your debts before you can move on, or it's getting some credit up front to give you a buffer to do good things. Like, it doesn't really matter. You're sort of describing the same process. You still got to go and do the refactor or whatever it is to make things stable. Um, but it was a good vehicle for those people around me to understand what we were doing and to understand it wasn't because the code base was bad. I think that was the big issue, if you like, that sort of explanation of like, well, why do we have to rebuild things? Did we not do it properly the first time? And it's like, we did within the realms of what it was doing. We are now trying to get ahead of ourselves, if you like, to lay down the groundwork for the next thing. And that landed well at the time with those people for me.
Very good.
But
I like that.
on my own, I don't need to sell myself on this, right? I'm already in. But I think I am seeing it through that lens, right? It's not like, oh, I've got to rebuild this because it's absolute rubbish. It's I'm shoring it up so that my next round of development for the rest of the year is going to be a much happier sort of place, a much more stable kind of place.
Yeah, makes
So
sense. For me, it's always the
it's a bit
the
of a
the
grind.
clean house metaphor, basically. Like,
Yeah.
if the whole building is in rubble, I need to do a lot of built up work. But like, if the building is sound, but this is just like everything is like the walls are dirty, then I need to paint the walls. But if everything is like stable, it's just like there's like it's just messy, then maybe I will have to clean it up. And maybe like today is not the day where I clean stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
We wanted earlier, and I stopped you because we weren't recording. We wanted to talk about watch bands
It's
or
okay.
watch straps. And
I think that'd be a nice way to round out the show, actually, Daniel.
yeah,
So just for viewers, they'll be able to see in a second, and for listeners, we'll describe it. But it just so turns out we're
we're
wearing the
wearing the
same
same.
type of watch band.
Yeah, exactly.
We are yin and yang.
It's the sports band with the holes. Is it the Nike band? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I've got the
mine is
black one. Daniel's got the white and black one.
right, exactly. And I was saying that this is actually one of my favorite watch bands because it just feels very nice on your skin, and the holes mean you're not sweating. And I recently discovered that I do like the I forgot the name. I forgot the name again, even though I googled it earlier. I
Fabric,
really like the
sports
fabric
fabric
one,
band.
the sports fabric band. Hang on,
Yeah,
I have the page here. The Sport Loop, that's the one. And
sport loop.
um,
Okay, yeah.
I I I never bought a Sport Loop because just from the pictures, it just doesn't look like comfortable to me. It just doesn't look good to me. I'm like,
Hmm.
what is this? And then a few months ago, I needed to wear a suit, and I wanted to have a watch band with like that fit with the color. And so I just popped into the Apple Store and was like, okay, what do they have that is like a single shade of dark color? And I settled on a midnight colored Sport Loop. And what can I
Hey.
say? This thing is so incredibly comfortable. Like, it's amazing. And like I always thought it would be scratchy somehow, but it's like really soft and like caresses your skin in a very nice way. And yeah, and then even like I was talking to Lisa about this, um and she was like, yeah, I like Apple Watches, but like she has very sensitive skin. Like she has a thing, I think, where
Hmm.
like pressure on her skin is like especially bad for her. And so she was like, yeah, she likes her Apple Watch. She recently got one, but it's actually like not perfect to wear. And so I was like, okay, you know what, let's switch bands for a second, and like here you can wear my
Hmm.
Sport Loop for until we meet again, like in a week or so. And so yeah, and like I hear good things from her as well. So I'm
You're
thinking
never getting
maybe at
that
some
back, Daniel.
point, yeah, probably. I'm thinking at some point I need to like buy another Sport Loop. And also what I really want is
Yes.
actually one of the that like the Apple Watch Ultra has this bright orange band. I really
Yep.
want that, but I don't have an Ultra, so I probably won't be
Okay.
able to. But I love that. I love those the Apple Watch Ultra bands. Like they're just nice.
I'm just having a look now. Yeah, they're the you
The
can buy
Ocean
them, but
band,
they are for
orange
the
Ocean
ultra.
band.
That's
You
right.
need a
And they're
49 millimeter watch, which is the Ultra. Should I get an
yeah.
Ultra? I should probably get an Ultra, right?
Should don't ask me that. I'm an enabler. I will turn around and say, "Just get it, Daniel. It's beautiful. Do it."
No, the thing is, I'm wearing the 41 millimeter watch. That's the smaller one because I have
Hmm.
like little dainty wrists, and also I like how it
Yep.
looks on my wrist. But at the same time, I'm really getting back into cycling. And
Yeah.
right now, that is mostly indoors. But at some point, I'm gonna go back into the mode where I spend like at least basically an entire day on the bike. And
Yeah.
the watch, the normal 41 millimeter Apple Watch, can do that if it is less than a year old, or if you
Yeah.
disable always on screen. If it's like in my
Okay.
experience, if it's more than a year old, so that the battery has gone through a lot of cycles, it will probably not make it. And then you have this choice where it's like, okay, it's been like 6 hours of like sporty activity. Do I turn off the activity so that it gets saved, or
Hmm.
do I continue and risk losing it because the watch will just turn off at some point?
Ooh, I don't
And
like the
so,
anxiety with that.
yeah, and so I've been thinking, should I get an Ultra? But then I look at the prices, and then I'm cured.
Yeah. Don't get me started on
Oh, but
Apple
look at that! Oh,
prices and
Apple
things.
Fine Woven has. So
You've
I
already
always wanted.
sold yourself, haven't you?
So, so Apple used to have leather bands, and they don't sell those anymore because they say they're going away from leather, because of the environment, and I assume animal rights. And so now they've replaced this with fine woven, and they never had the blue leather band. They never had that for the 41 millimeter watch. They always only had it for the bigger watches. And now I'm seeing
Yeah.
here on that page, because of course I'm browsing the Apple Store, is they have the Pacific Blue magnetic link fine woven band. They have that in my size, and it looks really nice. But at the same time, I'm hearing everyone is talking about the fact that fine woven is like very easy to scratch, and this is like $100. So I'm like, maybe
I saw
not.
a lot of feedback on fine woven. Well, not feedback, people posting to Mastodon and things, saying it wasn't very much good. So I would have reservations about that for sure, about going all in on one of those. But the Ultra itself, though, Daniel, everyone I know who's bought one loves it.
Yeah.
So yes, it's expensive, but yeah, if you're out there doing lots of sporty activity this summer, I reckon it could be worth it.
Yeah, if you want to support me, get a TelemetryDeck subscription.
Always be selling.
Always be selling. No, but if you listen to the show and you have a fine woven watch band, I really would like to hear from you how it fares in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and I would say
also,
whatever
Dave,
social media or platform people have found us on, they should @ you if they think you should get an Ultra. I think we should peer pressure Daniel into making an expensive purchase.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, please do. Let's just peer pressure me into spending money. Dave, what band did you get with your Vision Pro? Because like my Vision Pro arrived just yesterday, because it's like February 3 or 4 or something when this episode is released, right?
Yep.
So I got for my Vision Pro, I got the Hermes Double Tour strap.
You're getting a Vision Pro, Daniel, for real.
No. No. I was not getting a Vision Pro. I don't think it would be right now at where I'm at with my life and with my development story. I don't think it would make a lot of sense for me.
Yep. My accountant said no, basically. Yeah. On that note, Daniel, I'm afraid I'm going to have to wrap up for today. And I am very much deciding to leave this before we talk more about the Vision Pro. We can talk more about the Vision Pro on a future episode, I think.
You're just afraid of the thing that I have in the topic document. You said you would swear at me you said you would swear at me as soon as I asked you those questions. So I'm very much looking forward to doing that.
That's not this show. That's another time.
That is another time.
And I'm not sure I'll swear at you, but yeah, it'll be a hopefully an interesting thing to talk about. Yeah. Is like why.
Oh yeah, before we go though,
why the Vision Pro or not?
Earlier when we started recording, your microphone gave out, but your video was still visible. There was a situation, like it was quickly rectified, but I only saw you, but I didn't hear you. But I saw your mouth form very, very bad words, and I was like, "Yes, I recognize that."
It started in F and ended in F, I believe. Yeah. People shouldn't be surprised. I definitely swear a fair amount. I try and avoid it on the show, but
I'm a lip reader.
Sometimes it slips out. Yeah,
fantastic. If you can read lips, or if you want to talk to us about the Vision Pro or Apple Watch Ultra or our development journey, or if you have a question, please write us at contact@waitingforreview.com. Follow us on YouTube, on wherever you get podcasts, on Threads, on Instagram, and on TikTok, because we're everywhere. Mostly we are WFR Pod, but otherwise just search for the name of the podcast. And you can also write us directly. Where can people find you, Dave?
People can find me on Mastodon and the Fediverse at dave@social.lightbeamapps.com. And you can find out more about my apps just at lightbeamapps.com. How about yourself, Daniel?
Yeah, please buy the biggest subscription on TelemetryDeck.com if you want to enable me buying lots of stuff. And also write me at daniel@social.telemetrydeck.com. You can write me on Mastodon. And I haven't blocked Threads, so you can also write me on Threads at that account. I think that's possible now. I'm not 100% sure. Like if it is, please mention me. I want to see how that works. All right, Dave, have a fantastic day and see you soon.
Yeah. Cheers, Daniel. Catch you again.
Bye.